They put people in cages and sold tickets for the public to come stare. This isn't ancient history. This isn't medieval times. This happened in the late 18 and early 1900s. For decades, people were put on display like animals. Men, women, children from Africa, Asia, indigenous tribes, Pacific Islands. Some were bought. Some were promised work. Others, straight up kidnapped, abducted from their homes, and they never would return. Many were brought to Europe and the United States and placed inside of fenced-off villages, enclosures, and exhibits, then expected to just live their lives while crowds would watch. In 1889, Paris, during the World's Fair, the same fair that introduced the Eiffel Tower, organizers would build entire fake African villages. One exhibit contained over 400 indigenous people. Over 32 million people attended that fair. Millions just walked by living human beings for entertainment. A few years later, this would spread across Germany as well, in Berlin and Hamburg. Ethnological exhibitions were held in public parks and halls throughout the 1890s and 1900s. Promoters like Carl Hagenbeck openly marketed these shows as educational, placing people in recreated tribal environments, sometimes alongside animals, to suggest hierarchy and evolution. In London, it was just as normalized. They held human zoo shows at the London Zoo, but more famously, at the Crystal Palace. Here's a Carl Hagenbeck advertisement for the Crystal Palace, where they hosted over 80 Somalians in a recreated native village. Now imagine trying to live a normal life after you've been abducted from your homeland, as thousands of people just stop and stare. In the United States, at the Bronx Zoo, a Congolese man named Oda Banga was displayed inside the zoo's monkey house. They actually labeled him as the missing link between apes and humans. Unbelievable. At the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, entire primitive villages were constructed. Indigenous Filipinos, Native Americans, and others were displayed to demonstrate what organizers called stages of human development. And remember, this wasn't hidden, this wasn't fringe, this was widely accepted, publicly funded, and heavily advertised. The justification was always the same. It's science. Many of these individuals displayed in human zoos would never return home. Some would pass on from disease, some from exposure, some were absorbed into different types of institutions once the human zoos shut down. And this didn't stop because society suddenly grew a conscience. By the 1930s, it was just embarrassing calling it a zoo. It looked bad. So the villages were dismantled, the people were moved, and the language changed. But the belief didn't disappear, it just moved indoors, into institutions, into systems. They decided who was normal, who was broken, and who could be forgotten. And that's the part people don't want to talk about. This wasn't ancient cruelty. This was a more modern society funded by crowds for entertainment, disguised as science, and was quietly erased once it became uncomfortable for the mainstream to want to remember. Scary? Good. There's always another side to their science.